Hi, everyone. I'm Chanel Call. President Trump just spoke on the Ratepayer Protection Pledge, a policy aimed at protecting households from rising electricity costs tied to AI data centers. President Trump is calling on companies to build, bring, or buy all of the energy needed for building and operating data centers, paying the full cost of their energy and infrastructure no matter what, pledging to protect consumers from those price hikes. Here's a little of what he had to say.
Your country was dead, and now you have the hottest country anywhere in the world, and we are the hottest in the world. At the same time, we know that the data centers and AI are dramatically increasing the demand for electricity. It's only fair that the cost of building the new infrastructure required to meet this demand should be borne by the corporations themselves, not by the American consumers and the American patriots, American citizens. And I think everybody agrees to it. And actually, they really don't have a choice because there's no way of producing that kind of electricity, the kind you need. And they want to do it themselves. And honestly, they're coming up with some plans that are genius, just like they are. That's why earlier this year I introduced the ratepayer protection.
All right, CBS Saturday morning co-anchor and Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins me now to break all this down. So, Kelly, just catch us up here first. Like, how did we get here? What is the problem? And will this pledge actually fix it?
Sure. So he mentioned these AI data centers. We are in an AI revolution right now. We're talking about it all the time. And in order to power that development, or maybe when you and I are getting on ChatGPT and we're asking a query, you actually need so much power. And so that's where these data centers come in. A lot of the computations that are happening when it comes to all of these different developments in artificial intelligence, they happen at data centers. And for data centers to work, they need tons of electricity. They need tons of water. He wasn't even talking about that in that speech. And so what has happened as this revolution has just gone at light speed, there has been a requirement to build lots of these data centers. Now, what does that mean? If you are not increasing the capacity on your power grids, that like in California, for example, when I used to live out there, it was already like, oh gosh, when it's a hot summer day, don't charge anything, right? Now you're adding so much more of a strain on the power grid. And so when you have the same amount of capacity, it's very simple economics, and you increase demand, what happens? The price goes up. And so even though you and I are not data center owners, right? If we're living in some of these places, our utility bills are going up. So that's the problem. That's how we got here. But the way to get out of this is not to stop building data centers, right? You have to find a way to create more capacity. And so that's what the president is asking with this ratepayer protection pledge, that the companies, the governments, the power companies that are going to build more power lines, create these data centers, then instead of your and my utility bill going up, that they pay for all of these things. Now, you asked the question of whether this is a good idea. In theory, absolutely. This is fantastic. And I think it is, good marketing going into the midterms when this is going to absolutely be a flashpoint. You are going to set a national baseline. You are going to have a less damaging solution than let's not build data centers. You heard him say, by the way, one company, Alliant, is saying that we are going to freeze rates for the next 5 years. Now, I'm sure that people are already saying, well, my rates already went up, but at least not going forward. The issue here is that this is voluntary. There are no consequences if they don't actually pay for this. Or, by the way, it's really hard to determine what is the full cost. You don't want these companies paying too much, but you also don't want them paying too little. So there's so many different areas where, yes, this would be great and it would be fantastic if you could actually implement this, but it's a voluntary pledge.
Yeah, confusing because we don't know what enforceability of this looks like. It's not a law, it's a pledge. The president also spoke about, you mentioned Alliant, he spoke about Georgia Power, a couple of different companies that now say they're going to be freezing rates for everyday consumers. Let's hear what he had to say about that.
Possible. For example, Southern companies, Georgia Power has frozen base rates for households until 2029. Is anybody here from Georgia Power? There's a certain governor who's here. A certain governor who's here. Congratulations. Good job. That's a great job. I've heard about it. Congratulations to both, and it's fantastic. And Georgia, the revenue from Google's data center construction is allowing them to eliminate property taxes entirely. And that's what you call using it to your advantage. The numbers are so incredible. Nobody's ever seen. You know, all my life, the biggest building in the whole world was the Pentagon. And you can fit 25 Pentagons into some of these buildings, 25. And if you happen to be a community, and there's very little disruption. They're just large. They go on for miles. And frankly, if you like certain types of things, they're incredible to look at, to see that we could do something like this. But they also throw off tremendous amounts of money for the community. And when you look at Georgia and you look at the revenue, think of that, revenue from Google's data center construction, allowing them to eliminate all property taxes. Did you know that, Brian? That's not bad, right? So thank you very much. Great job. That's a great job.
So a lot of examples there, Kelly, the president making of this is working, and this can actually be helpful for people who live near the data centers. We talked about Georgia. You know, Skylar Henry did a piece there. I went out there a couple months before that. You know, I spoke to someone who her energy bill, I think, tripled in the last few years, and she, you know, now is thinking about selling her house because she can't afford it anymore. So I think for people like that, yes, a rate freeze is helpful, but those rates are already so much higher than they were before. When you think about the infrastructure that the president says these companies are now going to build, like, what are we talking here? How much time will that take to build out the grid and increase capacity to actually be able to bring the rates down?
So, I mean, that's the big issue. It's going to take a lot of time. I mean, I think he makes a good point. You know, this could be kind of what happens with the railroad, you know, revolution back in the day, where if you were a community that said, yes, come here, that's going to mean jobs. It's going to mean tax revenue. It doesn't mean it's going to mean jobs forever, because once these things are built, then you sort of move on.
Right.
And then some of the communities that didn't have the railroad going through got left behind. But yes, this is going to take a long time. There's a lot of red tape. Also, you're talking about this at a federal level. A lot of this stuff is going to happen on a state level. Look at what just happened in New York. Governor Hochul said, hey, we're not building any data centers for a year until we could figure out a better solution. So at the top line level, he's making a lot of statements and promises, which are fair, but the execution is going to come down to states, to companies, to tech companies, right? Are they going to be able to do this? So I think, look, this is something that's better than nothing. But I think let's go back to the person that you interviewed that said, well, my rates have already gone up. She's not going to see it go down likely for a while.
And just with a few seconds left, I know you mentioned this when we were chatting as well, but obviously this has become an issue people are thinking of as we head into the midterms in a couple of months. What does it say that the president made this announcement today at all?
I think it says he's very focused on the midterms.
All right, let's
Good PR move.
Kelly O'Grady, thank you.